The first time I walked into the classroom, I could feel every eye on me, though I wasn't sure if it was curiosity or something else. I had chosen my outfit carefully, soft pastel colors, a simple blouse, and jeans, but I still felt out of place, like a stranger in my own life. I wasn't a new girl. Not really. But that day, circumstances had pushed me into a version of myself I had never fully explored before, and for a few moments, I wondered if anyone would notice the difference. My heart was pounding like a drum in my chest as I crossed the threshold. "Hi, are you the new girl?" a voice asked, light and curious, but with a hint of suspicion. I looked up and saw a girl with bright, questioning eyes. My throat went dry, and I realized I hadn't expected this. I had rehearsed every possible response in my head, but the words refused to come. Finally, I nodded. "Yeah, I guess you could say that." The lie slipped out easily. Sitting down at the nearest empty desk, I tried to calm my nerves, but the laughter and chatter around me made it impossible. Every movement, every glance from the students felt like it was dissecting me. I caught sight of my reflection in the polished surface of the desk and barely recognized the person staring back. The softness of my features, the way my hair framed my face, it was unfamiliar and terrifying in its honesty. I had always suppressed this side of myself, kept it tucked away like a secret too dangerous to share, and now it was all out in the open. During the first class, I felt a strange mixture of exhilaration and fear. No one questioned why I looked the way I did. They treated me as a new girl, and in that assumption, there was a freedom I had never experienced before. I could observe them without revealing too much of myself, and yet, at the same time, I was revealing everything by simply existing. Every smile, every polite question, every tiny act of kindness was like a small rope tying me further into this new identity. After the bell, a group of girls approached me. Their smiles were friendly, almost rehearsed, and they introduced themselves one by one. I repeated my name, and I felt a strange thrill at how naturally it fit into the new persona I was living. They invited me to join them for lunch, and for the first time in a long while, I felt the pull of belonging. I hesitated for a moment, thinking about what would happen if the truth came out. But curiosity won. I followed them, and the laughter and chatter in the cafeteria seemed to envelope me like a warm, dangerous cloud. Sitting there among them, I realized how little I had actually known myself before. I had always thought of myself as one thing, someone safe and hidden, but now I was being seen in a way that felt completely new. They didn't know me, but they liked me. That was both thrilling and terrifying. I wanted to tell them the truth, to explain that I wasn't really the new girl, that I had never been someone this delicate or soft or visible before. But the words caught in my throat. How could I undo the magic of being accepted without risk? As the days went by, the act became easier, more fluid. I learned the subtle ways of carrying myself, the gestures, the tone of voice, the little pauses that made me fit into this world I had only glimpsed in dreams. The girls around me began to confide in me, sharing secrets and stories, and I began to feel a strange, overwhelming connection. But there was always that undercurrent of fear, that tension that someone would see past the illusion, would expose me. I became both performer and audience, watching myself from a distance, analyzing every movement, every laugh, every glance. It was during art class that the first real challenge came. We were asked to partner up, and one of the girls, Sarah, asked if I could join her. My stomach twisted. Up until now, I had been careful to stay just on the edge of intimacy, never too close, never too revealing. But here, I was thrust into collaboration, needing to share ideas, to touch the same materials, to see my reflection in her eyes. I felt my pulse accelerate, the old panic rising, but I pushed it down. We worked quietly, passing pencils and brushes back and forth. And then she said something simple, almost casual, that made my heart stop. "You have such a unique way of seeing things. I feel like you really understand me." Her words should have been comforting. Instead, they felt like a spotlight on the lie I was living. Did she see through me? Did she know that I wasn't the new girl, that this identity I had borrowed from some inner longing wasn't really mine? I tried to smile, to nod, to let her think what she wanted. But inside, a storm was raging. The truth was heavy, pressing down on me, and for the first time, I realized that this experience wasn't just about pretending. It was about discovering a part of myself I had been too scared to acknowledge. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about who I had become and who I had always been. The reflection in the mirror earlier that day had haunted me, not just the softness of my face or the unfamiliar curves of my body, but the courage I had never allowed myself to embrace. I had stepped into a world that was at once terrifying and liberating, and I realized that maybe, just maybe, the lie I was living wasn't really a lie at all. It was a door I had never dared to open, and now it was swinging wide. By the end of the week, the new girl persona had taken on a life of its own. I could feel it in the way people smiled at me, in the ease with which they included me, in the subtle shifts in my own behavior. But with that acceptance came the constant, gnawing fear of exposure. Every day was a delicate dance, balancing between who I had always been and the person I was becoming. And yet, for the first time in a long time, I felt alive, present, and seen in a way that didn't require hiding, not completely. As I walked home that Friday, I thought about the weekend ahead. I didn't want to return to the familiar, to the old routines that had always kept me hidden. I wanted to explore this side of myself, to understand what it meant to live authentically, even if it was in disguise. The reflection in the store window caught my eye, and I paused, studying the face staring back at me. It was both me and not me, a delicate balance of past and present, fear and courage, secrecy and revelation. And I realized that this was only the beginning. Monday morning arrived like a quiet storm. The hallways buzzed with chatter, lockers slamming, and the familiar rhythm of school life, but my mind was elsewhere. The new girl persona had settled into something almost comfortable, but the weight of maintaining it pressed against my chest like a hidden pulse. Every step I took, every smile I gave, every laugh I shared felt carefully measured. I had begun to notice the subtle ways people reacted to me, the extra warmth in their voice, the small gestures of inclusion, and it both thrilled and terrified me. During homeroom, I noticed Sarah again, sitting a few seats away. Her presence had become a kind of anchor. There was a trust developing between us that I had never anticipated, a connection that was deep and effortless. When she waved me over during a free period, my stomach twisted with nervous anticipation. I sat beside her, and we began to share stories about our lives, the kind of small details that people usually guard. Her laughter was easy, and I found myself laughing genuinely, not just performing. For a moment, the fear of being discovered faded, replaced by the warmth of companionship. But as the day wore on, the tension returned. In chemistry class, we were asked to work in pairs for an experiment, and of course, I was paired with someone who knew me best, or at least, knew the version of me I was presenting. I could feel the quiet curiosity in his eyes, subtle glances that seemed to ask, "Who are you really?" I tried to focus on the experiment, on measuring and recording results, but my hands trembled slightly, betraying the anxiety that churned beneath the surface. After class, as I walked through the crowded hallway, a group of students blocked my path. One of them, a girl I hadn't spoken to much, smirked and asked, "So, how's it feel being the new girl?" The words were casual, but there was a hint of challenge in her tone. I forced a smile, keeping my voice light. "It's different. Fun, though." She raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced, but let it drop, and the crowd dispersed. My pulse raced, and I realized just how fragile this illusion was. One wrong move, one slip of truth, and everything could collapse. Lunch arrived, and I joined the group again, feeling more confident now, or at least more practiced. We talked about movies, music, and shared embarrassing stories, and for the first time, I allowed myself to relax, to feel included without the constant fear of being unmasked. Sarah leaned over and whispered something funny, and I laughed harder than I expected, feeling the release of tension that had been building all week. Yet, beneath it all, a quiet fear lingered. Was this version of myself something I could truly sustain, or was it merely a temporary escape from reality? Later that afternoon, art class presented a new challenge. We were assigned a collaborative mural project, and I was paired with several students, including Sarah. Working closely with them, I felt the pressure of performance, of keeping up appearances. Every brushstroke, every suggestion, every moment of conversation had to feel natural, effortless. And yet, the more I immersed myself in the work, the more I realized that I was not just pretending. The creativity, the patience, the empathy I brought to the project were real parts of me, parts one had suppressed for fear of ridicule or rejection. When we finally stepped back to look at the mural, Sarah smiled and said, "You really brought this to life. I didn't know you had this in you." Her words pierced through the remaining walls I had built. I wanted to tell her the truth, to confess that I had been hiding, that this side of me had always existed, waiting for the courage to emerge. But I didn't. Not yet. There was still too much at stake, still too much fear of rejection, still too much uncertainty about how to navigate the fragile line between secrecy and authenticity. The walk home was quiet, the streets bathed in the soft glow of late afternoon sun. I replayed the day in my mind, analyzing every glance, every comment, every subtle interaction. I realized that being seen, truly seen, was both exhilarating and terrifying. I had stepped into a world where people liked me for a version of myself I had long denied, and the closer I got to being accepted, the more I feared losing it all. And yet, in that fear, there was a strange liberation. For the first time, I was living in the space between who I had been and who I was becoming, and it was intoxicating. That evening, I looked in the mirror, studying my reflection with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. The soft lines of my face, the way my hair fell, the unfamiliar confidence in my posture, it was me, but not the me I had always known. I wondered how long I could maintain the illusion of the new girl without unraveling, without exposing the fragile truth underneath. But there was also a spark, a quiet thrill that whispered, maybe this is who you were meant to be, maybe this is the part of yourself you were too afraid to embrace. By the end of the week, the line between performance and authenticity blurred. I began to anticipate interactions, to savor the small victories of connection and understanding, to relish the moments when people saw me not as a stranger, but as someone they could trust. And yet, the tension never fully dissipated. Every smile, every compliment, every shared secret carried with it the unspoken possibility of exposure. The thrill of acceptance and the fear of discovery became intertwined, a delicate balance that defined every moment of my new life. The week after that felt like walking a tightrope. Every interaction, every glance, every casual comment felt amplified, loaded with unspoken meaning. The new girl persona was no longer just a role I played, it was becoming an integral part of how I experienced the world. But with that integration came a weight I hadn't anticipated, the fear that someone would notice the cracks, the tiny inconsistencies, the moments when my voice or my gestures betrayed me. It was during gym class that the first real test came. We were assigned partners for a relay race, and my partner turned out to be one of the more observant boys in the class, someone who rarely missed details. As we practiced our exchange of the baton, I could feel his gaze lingering, subtle but probing. My chest tightened with anxiety. Was he trying to see through me? Was he aware that I wasn't really the new girl, that I had borrowed an identity to survive, to explore a part of myself I had never been brave enough to express? We lined up for the race, and I forced myself to focus, to channel the nervous energy into movement. The moment the whistle blew, adrenaline surged through me. I ran faster than I thought I could, the wind against my face, the sound of cheering, the rhythm of feet hitting the track, it was intoxicating. For a fleeting second, I felt free, untethered from all the fear and pretense. But as I handed the baton to my partner, I caught his expression, the faintest glimmer of suspicion or curiosity, and my pulse spiked. The mask had to hold, no matter what. Later that afternoon, Sarah approached me, her expression thoughtful. "Hey," she said softly, "can we talk for a minute?" My stomach tightened. Talking privately with her had always been safe, comfortable, but today there was an edge, a weight I couldn't quite place. We walked toward the library, a quiet corner offering a semblance of privacy. "I don't know," she began, hesitating, "there's something about you. I feel like I don't know the whole story. Are you really new here?" The question hit me like a thunderclap. I wanted to laugh, to brush it off, to say something vague and safe, but the truth pressed against my chest. My hands trembled, and for a moment, I considered fleeing, running from the corner, from the confrontation, from the vulnerability. But instead, I took a deep breath and forced a smile. "Yeah, I am," I said quietly, the lie tasting bitter on my tongue. Sarah studied me for a long moment, and then nodded, accepting the answer for now. But I knew she sensed something beneath the surface, something I wasn't ready to reveal. That night, sleep eluded me. I replayed the day over and over, dissecting every nuance of her gaze, every pause, every inflection. The thrill of being seen, of connecting, was tempered by the fear of discovery. I realized that this experiment in living as someone else was no longer just an experiment. It had become a journey of self-discovery, a confrontation with parts of myself I had long denied. And the more I explored this side of me, the more I feared the consequences of exposure. The next day, rumors began to circulate. Whispers followed me through the hallways, the kind that made my stomach churn with dread. "She's acting so differently," one student murmured. "Do you think she's really new?" another asked. My heart raced, and I felt the walls of my carefully constructed identity shaking. I had thought I could control how people saw me, but suddenly, the perception of others felt like a living, unpredictable force. I couldn't just play the part, I had to navigate a minefield of assumptions, judgments, and curiosity. It was during lunch that the tipping point arrived. A group of students I didn't know well approached me, their expressions a mixture of amusement and challenge. "So, new girl," one said, smirking, "what's your real story?" Panic surged through me. My pulse thundered in my ears. I opened my mouth, searching for a safe response, something that would diffuse the tension, but nothing came. Sarah appeared then, slipping between me and the group, her presence a shield. "Hey, leave her alone," she said firmly, and the group laughed nervously and moved away. Relief washed over me, but it was mingled with shame and fear. Even with allies, the fragility of my situation was impossible to ignore. That afternoon, alone in my room, I stared at myself in the mirror. The reflection was both comforting and alien, a mirror of the person I had created and the person I had always been. The fear, the secrecy, the constant balancing act, it was exhausting, but beneath it all, a quiet flame of courage burned. I realized that living in this duality wasn't just about pretending, it was about confronting the truths I had hidden from myself. I was learning to navigate the world with authenticity and bravery, even if that authenticity was cloaked in disguise. By the end of the week, the tension had reached a tipping point. I had moments of joy and acceptance, fleeting glimpses of freedom and connection, but I also felt the constant pressure of potential exposure, the delicate balance between vulnerability and safety. Every interaction carried weight, every glance carried risk, and yet, in that pressure, I discovered a resilience I hadn't known I possessed. The new girl identity was no longer just a mask, it was a doorway into understanding, acceptance, and a courage I had long denied myself. And as I lay in bed that night, exhausted but awake with the whirl of thoughts and emotions, I understood that the true transformation wasn't in how others saw me, but in how I was beginning to see myself. The journey was far from over, and the challenges ahead were uncertain and daunting. But for the first time, I felt the possibility of living fully, honestly, and bravely, even in the face of fear, doubt, and the unknown. The next week began with a strange mix of dread and anticipation. The whispers had quieted slightly, replaced by cautious curiosity, but the underlying tension remained. I had learned to navigate the hallways with practiced ease, my smile steady, my voice calm, but beneath it all, a storm still raged. Every interaction was a test, every glance a potential revelation, and I carried the weight of my secret like a fragile flame. During literature class, we were assigned a group project. I ended up working with Sarah again, along with two other classmates I hadn't spent much time with. As we discussed ideas, I noticed how effortlessly Sarah included me, how naturally she treated me as someone to be trusted, someone whose thoughts mattered. The warmth of that acceptance made my chest ache. I wanted to tell her everything, to unburden myself, but fear held me back. I had grown used to the delicate balance of being partially known, partially hidden, and the thought of disrupting that terrified me. As the days passed, I began to notice subtle shifts in myself. The new girl persona, once a fragile construct, was becoming a part of me, not just a role, but an exploration of traits I had long denied: confidence, empathy, vulnerability, courage. I discovered joy in small things I had never allowed myself to enjoy: the way my laughter lingered in the air, the way someone's smile could make my heart lift, the satisfaction of being fully present in a conversation. Yet, the fear of being exposed never fully disappeared. It lurked behind every friendly gesture, every casual comment, every moment of trust. It was during a quiet afternoon in the library that the turning point came. Sarah and I were working together, books open, pencils scratching against paper. She looked at me suddenly, her expression earnest. "I feel like you've been holding something back from me," she said softly. My heart skipped a beat. The words hung between us, fragile and sharp. I wanted to deflect, to brush it off, but something inside me urged honesty. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of weeks of fear pressing against my chest. I'm not really the new girl," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I've been exploring something about myself. Something I've always been afraid to show." I braced for her reaction, for disbelief, for rejection. But instead, she smiled gently, reaching out to touch my hand lightly. "I think I understand," she said. "You've been brave enough to be yourself, even if it wasn't easy. That's all that matters." The relief that washed over me was overwhelming. The fear, the tension, the constant vigilance, they all melted away in that moment of understanding. I realized that the courage I had cultivated, the resilience I had discovered, wasn't about pretending or hiding, it was about stepping into the parts of myself I had long denied. Sarah's acceptance was a reflection of something deeper, the possibility of living authentically, of being seen and valued for who I truly was. In the following days, I felt lighter, freer. The halls that had once seemed filled with scrutiny now felt like spaces of possibility. I laughed more easily, spoke more openly, and allowed myself to engage without the constant fear of exposure. The friendships I had formed deepened, built on trust, understanding, and the shared experience of navigating vulnerability. And though the whispers never entirely disappeared, they no longer held power over me. I had discovered an inner strength that could withstand curiosity, judgment, and uncertainty. By the end of the month, the transformation was complete, not just in how others perceived me, but in how I perceived myself. The new girl persona, once a borrowed identity, had revealed truths I had long denied: my capacity for courage, my ability to connect, my right to exist fully and unapologetically. I no longer feared the reflection in the mirror, I embraced it, recognizing it as the culmination of a journey that had been both terrifying and liberating. Walking through the hallways one afternoon, I caught sight of myself in a window, the sunlight catching the lines of my face, the subtle confidence in my posture. For the first time, I felt a sense of peace. I had survived the scrutiny, the curiosity, the fear. I had navigated the delicate balance of truth and disguise and emerged stronger, braver, and more fully myself. And in that moment, I understood something profound. Identity is not fixed, it is discovered, cultivated, and claimed, often through moments of fear, courage, and connection. The last bell rang, signaling the end of another day, and I walked out into the afternoon sun, feeling the warmth on my face and the lightness in my step. The journey had been difficult, filled with uncertainty and tension, but it had brought me to a place of self-acceptance and empowerment. They had thought I was the new girl, and in doing so, I had discovered a part of myself I had long hidden. It was no longer a role, no longer a secret, it was who I truly was, and for the first time, I was ready to live openly, fully, and without fear.